Hello and welcome to Poolside Problems. I'm Tor.
And I'm Elle. Poolside Problems is a podcast about our lives as 30-something-ish women living on a small island.
From moving abroad and finding friendship in unlikely places, the fun and the hard times, including some of the bigger problems life throws at us, like fertility, relationships, moving countries and everything in between.
Not forgetting our poolside problems, our daily rants that aren't really serious problems at all. Hello.
Hello.
It's been a while.
It has for us, not
Yeah.
for the people listening.
No, that's true. At least we're more up to date.
We are. What are we on? Episode 9 this will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Others.
Others.
Yeah, well, we're back more in sync with our, the podcast is going to be more in sync with our actual lives now.
Yeah, I was editing a podcast the other day and I was listening to it and we'd obviously recorded it quite far in advance of the time it got released. And some of the stuff we were talking about, I was like, oh no, that is we're like, yay, our podcast's finally come out. But this is episode 7 or something. It's come out weeks ago.
We did lose an episode for a bit, didn't we?
Yeah, I did lose it a little bit.
A special, exciting one.
Whereas this one will be out a week after we've recorded it. So it should be a lot more up to date, which is handy.
And it's the episode that you've all been waiting for, the fertility episode. Which we promised we were going to do before she just clicked her toes again.
Sorry. I never did it straight.
Where, we thought you might want to hear, for those of you who don't know a bit about Tor's story, tiny bit about my fertility story, and questions mainly around your IVF, your killer cells, and the reason why you had an IVF.
And these are questions that you guys have all written in, so that's quite good. Hopefully we'll get to answer some.
Yeah.
And if I can't answer them, because I did have a quick look and some of them are a little bit more medical than my brain is, we'll maybe put them out on Instagram and see if anyone's can help with any answers or experiences as well.
Oh yeah, good idea. And obviously they're anonymous. We're not
obviously
anyone.
And obviously it's with everything, it's all just my experience and my recollection of it. So please don't quote me.
You're very good at your disclaimer now.
No,
you just read it out.
Scared.
Cool. Well, should we jump in?
Yeah. So should we talk a little bit about both of our stories first? So this is Tor. I'm sure you know our voices by now. And I know I've gone over my story, exactly what happened in a previous episode. But just killer cells for people that don't know. My way to explain it is basically like an overactive immune system. So it's your body, your cells fighting off something unknown. So that's great in the sense that if you get different sicknesses sometimes, if you've got an overactive immune system, that's really helpful because it fights that for you. Whereas mine was fighting my pregnancies. So the treatment I had for that was an IVIG drip. In the end, lots of different stuff, but one of the main things, and that basically is something that coats your cells, so it stops your cells being able to fight and attack, and that was seemed to work for me. So that's kind of what natural killer cells are. They're just little bastards that go out and fight.
And you had those drips when, at what stage?
So I had them on my 4th pregnancy when we tried naturally. I had them as soon as I found out I was pregnant. And then every 3 weeks, I had a blood test to check what levels they were at. And then I had a drip after every 3 weeks up until normally 12 weeks. Because I had the twins, it was up to 15 weeks. But with the 4th pregnancy, that obviously ended up in a miscarriage. So that leads on to why I did IVF. And I'm sure that's a question a lot of people have asked, so I'll just answer that now. The reason I did IVF isn't because I couldn't fall pregnant. I could actually fall pregnant. It's because they needed everything in the whole process to be controlled. So basically I had an IVIG drip before they even put the twins inside me. And then they knew exactly what date they went in and they were working on exact days and times. Whereas if you fall pregnant naturally, obviously they can't do that because they don't know when you're going to fall pregnant. So it's just basically made it the most controlled that they possibly could. And that was the final pregnancy, and that's how I had the twins. So I believe that is probably why it worked and one of the best ways for me personally. But yeah, that's why I had IVF, because a lot of people are like, oh, been trying for ages. What made you have IVF? And unfortunately, I can't answer the question of like trying for ages, because that wasn't the issue. I had IVF to have a controlled pregnancy around my natural killer cells, if that makes sense.
You weren't like technically infertile, for example, or like
No,
you weren't struggling to actually conceive.
no.
And the clinic you used is like what not many places kind of, not all clinics, not all IVF clinics do this killer cell treatment.
No, and it's actually kind of a real split, not decision, split. What's my
Opinion.
opinion? Thank you. So some places like really don't believe it's a thing. They won't treat for natural killer cells, and some places really pioneer and champion it, like the clinic I went to, which is called ARGC in London. And I obviously believe in it. I believe it worked. And I've had some really negative things, even while I was pregnant, from people saying that it isn't a thing and it's really bad for your body. But I think when your end result is the babies and you haven't had that throughout the whole rest of your pregnancies, then it's hard not to believe it is a thing. So yeah, they are really brilliant, and they're really on top of it all. So that's great.
How did you find out about it?
Killer cells or ARGC? ARGC.
Both.
Oh, so ARGC was actually recommended to me through a couple that live in Bermuda, which we're very, very grateful for. And it's mind-boggling. I know anybody that has had to go privately and look for a clinic, it can blow your mind. And I do think if someone can personally recommend you, then that really, really helps. I looked at that and one or two others, but again, I don't know how you make a decision. I just went with ARGC because I'd heard such good feedback, and I just think that's, for me, was the easiest way to choose it. And obviously the results were really good alongside that. How I found out I had natural killer cells was because I could obviously conceive. They tested me for like a million other things that they would test you normally after 3 miscarriages for. Don't ask me to name them because I've got no idea. And basically everything was normal, normal, normal. And unfortunately, a lot of people, it is unexplained fertility. But because my body was miscarrying so much, they were like, there's one other test we can do, and it's for this natural killer cells. And then they did that, and that's when they realised it was high. So because some clinics don't do it, some people will never be tested for that. And that's why I do talk about it a lot, because if you've been tested for everything and you haven't been tested for that, it's definitely worth just finding out.
Do they did they test your body for that, or they test the fetuses?
So they test my body. So they'll do a blood test, and it gets sent off to a clinic it's not a clinic, it's actually like a university lab in Chicago.
That's one of the questions, by the way.
Oh, there you go. Here's your question answered.
Did your clinic use the lab in Chicago?
Yeah, I think that's like the majority of where they're sent, to be honest with you, or that's where the majority of them are sent, sorry. And then the lab in Chicago does all their bit, and then they send the results back to your London clinic. So I actually can even do that from Bermuda. I have my bloods done here. I take them away myself, FedEx them myself to Chicago, and then Chicago sends the results to London. So yeah, that's how they do it. And I know some people have a biopsy in the uterus, I think, or something.
Wow.
I don't know if I had that, because I had a few things done. And honestly, I think people that have had fertility will totally agree with me with this. Some people are a lot more like Elle, I think, would remember every single thing that happened to you. Your memory is like insanely good. Whereas I think also, like, my brain just blocks a lot of stuff out because it's a lot to take in, and it was like a lot of horrible stuff that happened.
And you were poked and prodded
Constantly.
like not just the fertility phase, but also through the pregnancy.
Yeah,
stuff. So
exactly.
there's a lot.
So I actually can't even remember if they did that for me, but I know the main thing they do is the blood tests that do get sent to Chicago. So it's quite hard, like easy. Like when you're pregnant or doing fertility, you have gazillions of blood tests. So that one extra costs a shed load. Don't get me wrong.
Really?
This is the horrible thing about it. Like the blood test alone costs a lot more money, because obviously they've got to send it to Chicago, pay the Chicago people. And then the actual IVIG drip as well, on top of that, costs a lot of money. So it's a really mean fertility thing. I mean, fertility itself is quite expensive, but yeah.
And another question, actually, which I haven't necessarily seen, but is that, like, why did you go back to the UK, not Bermuda?
Because Bermuda doesn't have fertility, basically. I think they have like one guy that comes over every so often or something from America, but you can't rely on that. So the options are you either fly to the US or fly to the UK. And for me, I had the recommendations in England, and I knew that if I needed to stay there for prolonged periods of time, I could stay with friends and family. Whereas if I was in the US, it would be very much like booking hotels, apartments, and things like that all the time. So for me, the best thing was to go through the UK. And I'm glad I did because, yeah, when I had the boys, I ended up getting locked down there for like so long. And if I'd have been in the US, it'd have been a bloody nightmare.
If you did it again, would you go to the UK?
Good question. So we are already kind of thinking about it, maybe doing it, and some lengthy chats with the clinic in London. We are actually, if we go again, probably going to try naturally, and just see, like, your body can do strange things, see if we can do it. And I have actually found somebody that can do the IVIG drips in Bermuda because they are used for other medical things. So I can get that side of things here. I can get the drugs I need prescribed here. And fingers crossed, if we decide that is the way forward, that's what we'll do first. If unfortunately I don't fall pregnant, or I do fall pregnant and something goes wrong, and we decide we would like to try again, then I definitely would go back to the UK. Yeah. I've got 4 eggs on ice there. Is it
Oh.
eggs or
Embryos?
well, they're already mixed together.
Okay, embryo.
Embryos, yeah. See that my knowledge is awful. Yeah, I've got 4 on ice. So obviously it depends how they defrost, but yeah, 4 good ones currently. So
How much do they cost to keep? Not
another
much.
question, I don't know.
Oh, really? Yeah. I've heard people talking about like, oh, do you keep them?
It's like an annual fee, and I'm definitely paying that. I can't remember what it is. It's not a significant amount. I know that because I'd have remembered it if it was.
Actually, also, this is my other question. My one is when you do it with your partner, like husband or partner, IVF, do you have to sign stuff about those eggs, for example?
Yeah, you do.
Like what you have to make decisions about what will happen to the eggs,
Yeah.
embryos left over.
Yeah. So there's loads of questions they ask, and it's so intense, but it's also like so funny, but it's not funny at all. It's that awkward funny. Or it's like, so it says here, James, if you die, can I still use these? And he's like, whoa, okay. Yeah, I guess so. And like, it's such like having those conversations, you're like, shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, if James were to die, I could still use them. What you can do with them if you decide you don't want them anymore, they can just be destroyed. You can donate them to other people,
Yeah.
or you can donate them to science. And James and I had like quite a lengthy chat about that. We definitely didn't want to donate them to other people. Just don't want mini us's walking around with other people that we've got no idea if they've been used or not.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a decision. If you decide you want to do it, you should be sort of, no, we would want to be part of the process. We wouldn't want it just to be out there. So that was a definite no for us. And then basically, because for science and people looking into things and using other people's things to get us where we were, we felt like we should give it to science, basically. So we have ticked that box. If we don't use them, then they will be used for like medical science, basically, which is still a bit eerie, but you can't find new things if you don't have things to use. So yeah, that's that decision.
Okay, I'm going to jump into some questions from you guys now. When do you realise you need extra help when trying to conceive?
So I think from my side of things, so if you keep miscarrying, they normally won't check you out until you've had 3 by like a standard, because 1, 2 or 3 miscarriages, they class as like miscarriages are so common, and sometimes there's just no reason they happen. So if you have like 1 or 2, they're like, look, it could just be bad luck. So just try again. And if you're pregnant on the 3rd time, then they're like, yeah, it probably just was like bad luck, or like there was something so wrong with it, your body just gets rid of it, which is a good thing for your body to do in a way, because you don't want to get further down the pregnancy and find out there's severe things.
I think about the same, what my miscarriage was a chemical
pregnancy. Yeah.
Or actually, no, I think it was just they couldn't find. They did actually test it because I had a DNC. So they were able to test the cells.
Yeah.
But they were like, this was not a viable pregnancy, basically.
Yeah.
So like,
So your body's already decided, yeah, get rid of that, which is clever. It's clever.
it is clever.
So yeah, after 3, I had tests done because that was when people are like, right, you must have something wrong. If you want to get tests done before that, then I'm sure you can. It's just like that's the standard rule based on like the number of miscarriages, etc. Um, I think if you are trying for a baby and not falling pregnant, because I haven't been down that road, I don't know. I have plenty of friends that have been down that road, and I really think it's personal preference, and I really think it's something you need to talk to your like obstetrician gynecologist about, because it depends on your age, it depends on like your lifestyle, it depends on so many different things.
Where you live, like,
Yeah, like what NHS offers you, how long they will make you try for until they help you out. So that for me is something that I don't know, that is totally how long is a piece of string, basically. I think that's something you need to discuss with like professionals or people around you.
also I feel like something that like, because we've talked with various people over the years about fertility, just personally, and because of your journey and you sharing it, like a lot of people, I've noticed a few people don't know when they ovulate, for example,
Mhm.
and so they're like having sex literally at the wrong time.
Yeah.
They don't know how long their cycle is,
Yeah.
and so it could be as simple as like trying with ovulation sticks rather
Yeah.
than like going to the OBGYN, not to undermine like that
No,
could
that's
also
so
be something
true.
more. But like when I think IVF, so my friend said when they were only considered for IVF once they'd been trying for say 12 months,
Yeah.
like with no kind of problem.
Yeah.
So um
That's a good point. And if it is like, if your ovulation is off, there are things like acupuncture. So I didn't know when I ovulated and I had acupuncture, and I literally, he was like, sorry, I hate this word, but he was like, do you not get a discharge when you ovulate? And I was like, hope. Didn't even know that's a thing. And he literally did acupuncture for a couple of weeks. And the next time I ovulated, I got it and I got stomach pains. And I was like, wow, this is insane. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Whereas some of my friends are like, oh my God, I get that every time I ovulate. I was like, wow, okay. Like, yeah, that's crazy. And it depends, like, so if James and I try naturally this time, we are only going to give it 3 to 6 months, because we just are like, that's our cut off and we are going to go down the IVF route. But we've already been through a whole load of process.
yeah.
So it just depends. It just depends. That's just our decision.
Okay. Did Tor transfer 2 embryos or 1?
So we transferred 2, which I know they don't really love to do anymore. They would much prefer just to do 1 every time. And it was a big discussion we had with the clinic. But actually, because my killer cell levels were so high and I'd had the 4 miscarriages, they were like, look, we don't love to put 2 in, but we really do believe that there's a high chance your body will fight off at least 1 of them. So at least I had a higher chance of carrying 1. Obviously, if we'd have put 1 in, and it fought 1 off, then I'm left with none. And obviously, then in that conversation, you have to have, well, 1 of those could split or 2 of them could split. You can end up with 3 or 4 babies. And I think at that time, James and I were like, any number is better than none. Now I've got twins. I'm like, oh my goodness, if we'd had 3 or 4, a whole nother kettle of fish. But yeah, so we had 2.
And was it fresh or frozen?
It was fresh because annoyingly, with my miscarriages, so the first one they tested and couldn't find anything. The second one is when I first moved to Bermuda, and this just literally killed my knife. I was like, God, this couldn't be more ridiculous. But the saline that they put it in to send it off for testing had all gone off in the hospital. So they couldn't send it off for testing. So that one we had no idea. The third one, I can't remember what the reason was that we couldn't test the third one.
Was that the one that you passed it naturally?
Yeah.
And then for ages.
Yeah.
And
Well done. That's yeah, so yeah, I was literally passing it for so long. So by the time the D&C had happened, there wasn't hardly anything left. So they couldn't test that. And then the fourth one, I passed naturally as well. I didn't need a D&C.
so what does that mean, the difference between fresh and frozen?
Oh, well done. Thanks. So if they'd have been frozen, they could have tested them.
Right.
And if you go fresh, they don't test them, so it's just like a natural, normal pregnancy.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
So you test when it was like 12 weeks.
yeah, exactly. So like that,
Genetic test.
yeah, the genetic testing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
they do all that before. So because the ones they had tested mine, 1 or 2, whatever they were, there was nothing wrong. And because there didn't seem to be anything else wrong with me throughout any of the other pregnancies, they were like, look, it's a high chance that they're going to be fine. And fresh is just like frozen. You could freeze them. And then, as I say, as they unthaw and they're not right, then you lose them. So I was like, look, just do the fresh ones. Whereas obviously if we go again, they're on ice and they've all been tested. So we'd just have those ones put in. But yeah, that's the decision we made, is because I'd already had some tested and they were like, there's nothing wrong. There's no reason why you should be worried about it.
And is it the same process, based more or less for freezing your eggs? Like, say if you wanted to just freeze your eggs at age 34,
I would say so.
until and so then they freeze them, test them.
Yeah, I don't know definitely the answer, but
Yeah.
I would say so, because if you're like, like me and somebody that's freezing them because they want to save them till they find the right person, they're still taking them out and then freezing them, testing them, freezing them, whatever way around it is. And then they're just both sat there waiting for something to happen. So I'd presume it was exactly the same process. Yeah.
But I guess they're not fully formed embryos yet, so they just test the egg quality. Is that?
No, so they are. So they get to a certain level of, it's called blastocyst.
No, because if they've got no sperm in.
Oh yeah, you're right. So they haven't mixed it with sperm, have they?
So I guess they just test the eggs and see
Yeah.
how many you've got and what.
I guess so. Actually,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. That's a really good question. Yeah, because mine have got the sperm already congealed with it.
And then the blastocyst, like I remember actually, if it was the blastocyst, it's like day by day.
Yeah.
Like
So
they change.
I think it's like 5 is normal, but I can't remember like roughly when they want it to be. I've got a feeling we went to day 6 because they just wanted to give it that extra day. Whereas sometimes, if it's like a really strong, good one, or if it's really weak, I can't remember which way around it is, people will be shouting through the thing. They're like, no, it's this. They wait a little bit longer, but it's them monitoring it on how well they're growing and stuff.
So cool. And you see 2 humans.
It's so cool. Like, one of my friends had some eggs put in the other day, and she literally sent me a picture of the incubator, and she was just like, this is where my embryos are sitting before they go inside me. Like, this is mental. And it was just an incubator, but and it looked empty, but it's just got this little petri dish in it. I was like, oh, there it is. Like, I just got so excited, where it's so silly. But yeah, it's crazy. It is crazy.
That's
It's
very
really clever.
And another random interjection here, but I love that you said because they're 2 separate embryos, the boys are basically just like they just grew inside you the same day. They're as genetically similar as brothers, rather than like twins.
Yeah.
Which I find so amazing.
Yeah. So it's same as like if 2 eggs went in and then
Down your fallopian.
yeah, like it's exactly the same. But it's just crazy because they're not identical, so they've not split and they haven't got that exact same.
But when they were taking your egg and James's sperm, they weren't like, let's make one that looks like James and let's make one that looks like Tor.
No.
And behaves exactly like James. And like, let's switch them around a bit. They didn't do all that, but it happened that way, which I find so amazing.
We do have one each. It is insane.
It's so cool. I mean, in a way, so do we. Like, have one.
Yeah, you do. To be
born at different times. Okay, we don't really know what this question is. Doctor said 2 tests that can be done 8 weeks apart.
Oh yeah, this was something to do with like natural killer cells. And they said there's 2 tests. Unfortunately, if you put this question in, the only reason we brought it up is because I don't really know where it sits. So if anybody's got any more insight or knows what this is about, can you message us on our Instagram, and we'll have a look, or we'll put it out there and see and elaborate and see if we can get any more like feedback for this person, because I don't know what it's about.
Okay, and I think the same applies to this one. Advice for first round protocol and issues with thick linings.
Oh yeah, so the long protocol, I think that question was. I did the short protocol, and I can't remember what the decision making was around that, if I'm completely honest. So I don't know much about the long protocol, and I don't remember having about the thick lining. However,
is thick lining endometriosis?
No, because endometriosis is like when stuff, I think, like, sticks to your lining and, like, other
Yeah.
things in your, like, in your system. Um, so again, I'm not sure. So if anyone's got any feedback on anything to do with that, because I didn't have either of those, but I would be interested to see if anyone's got any feedback, that we can, like, pass on.
Any advice for that?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you a more anxious mum due to having had fertility issues and IVF?
Um, I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? We spoke about this before, I think, on one of the other podcasts about being pregnant, and obviously anyone can be pregnant, anxious in their pregnancy. I do believe that, like, the first pregnancy I had, I was so much more like, oh, la, 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 about life until I had the miscarriage. And then everyone since, I definitely got more anxious and more worried, and you overthink it because you know what can happen. And even if you know about miscarriages, if you haven't had one, you don't know how that feels, which is a lovely thing to have. There's no diss in there. But I think yes is probably the answer to that, but I don't know, because I don't, like, I think anyone could be an anxious mum, but I think personally for me, it made me be like, appreciate having the twins so much more than if I'd have probably just had them, like, really easily and naturally. But that doesn't mean that other people can't be anxious. I think it just means you have this feeling that, well, I must fully appreciate this more.
Which if you're more grateful, I complain a lot more about like parenting woes.
I don't
There.
know. I do think you do feel more grateful,
Yeah.
which is, like, really shit, because actually, like, it's so annoying. Like, you've worked really hard and, like, yes, you are grateful, but you've still got that end result of a baby. Like, you should all be grateful for that. But yeah, I think probably the answer is yes, but because I've only ever had infertility and IVF problems, I only know from that side of things.
The
I
one
think
thing I was super anxious about was the temperature of the room.
oh my, I've said
said
actually about Czections because Elle thinks it's hilarious, because she had her babies here and she was like, literally, I've never really thought about, like, the temperature of the room. Like, it was hot here, so we didn't put much clothes on the kids, and, like, that's as far as it went. Whereas where the boys were preemie, the first day they brought them into my room, because they were obviously in NICU for, like, a night or two. I can't remember which baby it was, but, like, I was holding one, and the one was like, "Oh, we need to check his temperature because you can't let them get too cold because they're obviously so diddy." And she literally was like, "Oh my God, it's too cold, it's too cold, take his clothes off, skin to skin." And James and I shit ourselves, because this baby was, like, fully wrapped up, had a hat on in the hospital room.
£4.
Like, nobody had told us that this was a thing. So then there I am, like, whipping my top off, like, doing skin to skin, making sure this baby's warm. And then she's like, temperature can't be like this, you can't. And so the whole time we were in hospital, everything was about, like, the temperatures, the temperatures, the temperatures. And honestly, James and I left that hospital and we were temperature fucking on it. Like, it was so scary, because we were like, well, what, like, something's going to happen really bad.
Well, it never gets that cold here, right? So
No.
we never had like the likelihood that their temperature would drop unless they were poorly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, even now though, I'm like, do you think they're all right at night? And James is like, babe, you haven't, like, fully wrapped them up or got hardly any clothes on them. They're literally in, like, a sleep bag and a long sleeve vest. Like, they're perfectly fine. But I think that woman just scared me so much that, like, yeah, it is hilarious, because I am all about the temperature. I'm not I don't check their temperature. Like, the funny thing is that when like Sonny's first ever ear infection, I rang the doctor. I was like, yeah, I think my son's not feeling well. And she was like, has he got a high temperature? I was like, it feels hot. Yeah. She's like, well, what is his actual temperature? And I was like, oh no, I haven't taken that. Like, I'm quite chilled and, like, in other sense.
It's
Yeah.
also so hard to take a child's temperature.
Oh, so
Like,
hard.
I don't know how people do it every day. Well, like, not every day, but very frequently, and they know their child's temperature. And
Yeah.
I'm hopeless at it. I rely on the, like, monitor to tell me what temperature they are. And we digress. I don't think you're an anxious mum, though.
No, I wouldn't say.
What I was referring to about the temperature thing is, like, sometimes, like you said, you'd have one thing that makes you, like, for me, it was Albie choking, because there was, like, we'd heard this horrible choking story from London around the time that he was having solids. And we actually had a choking incident at nursery with Albie, and it made me super freaked out and
Yeah.
so now I'm, like,
That's your thing.
nervous about
Yeah.
him choking more than I am about Rory, who's
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah.
And stuff. So yeah, everyone has their little things. bathroom terror. So this refers to like any advice for keeping your chin up when you're trying to conceive after losses and you go through that 2-week wait, and then you've got to go into the bathroom and check the test result.
Oh my goodness. So hard, because I think I was in lockdown when I was in my 2-week wait, or I was like, it was the start of COVID, so not many people were doing much. And I obviously didn't want to do too much and make myself tired and like wear myself out. But also, if you just sit around doing nothing, it is like the longest 2 weeks of your life. It is horrific. So I think I actually just tried to like keep my mind busy with like watching TV series, like things that can like take you away into something where you're not doing too much. Um, like having like long conversations with my like friends and family, just like catch ups about general life. But if I'm honest, like that 2-week wait is hard. And like no matter what you do, whether you keep active the whole time, you relax the whole time, like you will think about it pretty much constantly. Because especially if you've like done IVF and you've got to wait that 2 weeks, like
So invested.
oh, so invested, it's insane. So I'm afraid there's no like lovely answer to that. Like it's hard. And just if you hear any little like things like try and eat this or do that, and it's something you want to do, just do it. Don't let anybody be like, don't eat beetroots. That's not a thing. It's a beetroot. It's healthy. Who gives a shit? Eat the beetroot. If people are like, oh, I drank milk every day, like, and you want to drink milk every day, drink the fucking milk, because if you don't, you might think, oh, why didn't I do that? Like, unless it's something really unhealthy, like smoke 20 fags a day, probably don't do that unless you really want to.
Go out and get drunk and stick your head out of a limo taxi.
Yeah, like Elle did before she knew she was pregnant. But yeah, like I think just do what you want to do and don't listen to too many other people.
Yeah, and also there's nothing wrong with like just accepting that it sucks.
Yeah,
And you could share it with someone, not necessarily, you with your partner is obviously, but like with like just being like, I'm in that worst bit now right now where
yeah,
I'm in the 2-week wait. And obviously then it means that whoever you've shared it with will then text you being like, any news?
yeah,
So maybe you don't want to do that, but I did like sometimes just acknowledging that it's a
yeah.
bit time and you just have to get through that. But doing it month after month, I am like,
I think if you're trying, like you just expect every month that it's going to happen. Like you
Yeah.
hope every month it's going to happen. So there is always that small bit of disappointment because you are actively trying to have a baby. So like, yeah, it's hard. But I do think talking about it with somebody and just being like, look, I'm on my 2-week wait. I'm not overly excitable this week, or like blah blah. And like as a friend having like someone going through it, try not to be too like asking too many questions. Just be like, yeah, this is shit for you. Look, we're here. And like I will never like Elle said, like you might get someone messaging you being like, any news and stuff. Like definitely don't do that. Because if it's good news, they'll probably message you, and if it's bad news, they probably won't straight away. And if it's good news and they haven't just got round to messaging you yet, and you're like, you want to know or you want to check in on them, just message being like, just checking in, seeing how you're doing, because the person will know what you mean, but you've not actively said like any news, which could really like make them feel shit. Whereas if like they've had shit news, they'll probably be like, oh yeah, I'm happy to tell you, but it's not that like directness, if that makes sense. So I feel like that's a good tip for anyone, because I always get asked like, oh, my best friend or my sister's going through it, what do I do? And I'm like, don't ever be like, oh, it's going to be okay, don't worry about it, because like they are worrying and it might not be okay. So just be like, however they're feeling, like almost mirror it, being like, I know you're feeling shit, I'm really sorry, this is shit for you, rather than being like, don't worry, you'll be okay, because like, fuck off. Like, then you're that person will be like, fuck off.
this actually goes on really well to a question, what not to say to someone who's going through miscarriage or fertility issues.
Yeah, I think just like,
Or what to say.
don't worry, I'm sure it'll happen again. It wasn't your fault.
At least you know you get pregnant.
Yeah, at least you know you can get pregnant. Oh, that was like one of my worst ones, when every time I was having a miscarriage, I was like, yeah, I can get pregnant, but I still didn't have a baby. Like somebody that hasn't got pregnant yet, I'm like, you haven't got pregnant and you still don't have a baby. Like we're in the same situation. Like it's just shit no matter what. Yeah, as I say, I always think just like be there, don't ask too many questions. like mirror how that person's feeling, be understanding of their feelings. Um, Try not to be too upbeat. Like, just go and sit with them and be like, "Can I make you a cup of tea?" Like, depending on what friend it is. "Would you like a glass of wine?" Don't even necessarily, like, tell them you're gonna pop round, like, judge their mood, but pop round and just be like, "Oh, I just thought I'd see how you're doing." If you get there and it's clear they don't wanna be there, just be like, "Right, here's a hug, see ya." Or be like, "Fancy a glass of wine?" And probably they'll be like, "Yeah, actually, I really do." And then they'll be just so happy because they're probably not gonna reach out for you to come over to them. I'd say they're the best things to do.
Um, this person may be like, no, that was terrible. But we sent like a little care package to a friend who did IVF in the UK, from a group of girls here, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it was like calligraphy sets,
Oh, yeah.
because she was, bored and just hanging out in the UK when we were all here. And I can't remember if it was the 2-week wait or just after when she'd conceived, but was waiting to like travel back here. But yeah, and some pajamas and stuff. Obviously, you don't have to like splurge on people, but just a few distractions.
Yeah, that was
Like
actually really nice. She did really appreciate it.
quite a fun like thing to do. Why did you have a C-section?
So, when I knew it was definitely twins, I was a bit like, "Oh, I don't know if I wanna push out 2 twins," if I'm totally honest. But then there's actually
Twins.
2 twins, 2 children. Um, the decision was actually taken out of my hands because I had placenta previa. I get confused with which one's which. Where your placenta is covering your cervix, so you wouldn't actually be able to push it out because it's in the way. So I had that, and then I had vasa previa, which is when there's also then a blood vessel in that. So if I were to go into labour naturally and it pulls and strains on that blood vessel and it bursts, sorry, essentially what could end up happening is that the twins would have bled out and died, and it could have been fatal for them and me. So that meant I had to have even more scans than a normal twin pregnancy. I was being scanned like every week, every 3 days sometimes, and just checking on it and what was happening. And then normally with twins, they come out at about 36 weeks, depending on you and everything. And they brought that forward by 2 weeks for me because my obstetrician was just like, "I'm just petrified because if you go into labour, we have like not very long before something happens and it's going to be bad." So yeah, it was a planned C-section. We knew we wanted to get them out and it be safe. And like obviously having babies that early is really scary because they could have really bad health issues. They're not quite fully developed yet. And thankfully, luckily, we had the first night with the boys. The next day, they both went into DCO, and then one was in there for 1 night and the other was in for 2 nights, and then they were back with us. So we were super, super lucky. They didn't have hardly any of the big problems that twins can have. Um, and I was willing to take that risk rather than like worrying about going into labour and something really awful happening.
And you had a couple of bleeds as well, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'd had a couple of bleeds. And I think that was just the pressure of the babies. There wasn't anything too sinister, but they were just like, "Look, there's a lot of things going on with you and have gone on with you that we just don't want to risk anything." And my like C-section scar was absolutely fine. I got a small infection inside and took some antibiotics for that. But overall, my recovery was absolutely fine. And actually, if I go again and it is just one, I'd love to try and give birth naturally. So I'm not averse. I have no aversion to either. It was just the right thing. And I don't know if I definitely would have made the decision to have a C-section if the decision was taken out of my hand in the end. But it was, so that's what it was.
I had a C-section with both of mine. And Albie was my first, and he was at 39 weeks, 38 weeks, he was 10 pounds. So I had like some hip pelvic thing when I was a baby. So my OB/GYN did like a pelvic exam and said probably better to not go into labour for that reason, because with a really big head, it like I think it's shoulder dystocia or something, like they can get stuck. The head gets out, but then the shoulders get stuck, so you have to like push them back in and then turn it and then put it back out. Anyway, probably slightly more controversial in that like is much easier here to have a planned elective C-section than it
Yeah,
is in the UK,
for sure.
which actually I saw. There's been loads of news about it in the UK recent, like because of that Shrewsbury report
Oh yeah.
that obviously the NHS leaning and the natural birth movement is more towards avoiding C-section at all costs, or literally all costs. And so it's a lot easier for me to just have that conversation at however many weeks with my obstetrician. And I was very anxious about just like having a friend who'd been through really, really bad labours that
Yeah.
ended up in an emergency C-section, and the that I didn't want to feel like responsible for like something that might cause longer lasting things
Yeah.
with him. So I just went, on balance, I just chose to have a C-section for that reason. And then with Rory, she was my waters broke early, so I actually probably would have had a C-section anyway, but then I
Yeah.
had to have her at 37 weeks just because there was no fluid left. So
She had no fluid.
yeah. But actually, in fact, like she got stuck in the C-section, so I didn't realise that could happen as well.
But that's
So,
true. It's like me. Like Rafty got stuck behind my placenta, and I had to bloody cut it open, and pull him out, and then I lost loads of blood. So like, there's pros and cons of both.
yeah. But would I do it again? Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to try and push one out, but I also don't know.
I think, yeah, like it's just like it's personal. It depends who you're with, where you're going, what your baby's like, what you're like. Yes, luckily here we do have a lot more of a choice about going for a C-section. And I say right now, like I'd love to push out a baby, but who knows what my next pregnancy, touch wood, if I have one, is like. But if it's something that you are kind of leaning towards, or somebody's saying like you should have, I personally had a really positive experience, and so did you, around C-sections overall. So
Yeah, and ultimately, what all we want is to meet our babies,
yeah,
like in the healthiest way possible,
Yeah.
and stuff. And like I get that a lot of people, especially sort of like NCT, want to encourage the like as natural as possible, and like I would love to be like
Yeah.
things to be as natural as possible. But this article I actually saw yesterday about this girl that's got a book out actually, and it said that, like, I can't remember the statistic, but back in like the 70s, say, when like natural birth movement kind of came around, not came around, but was being really pushed, babies were literally like 40% smaller, and people were like 10 or 15 years younger than
So
the average age.
Yeah.
So, but also now the statistic is that like, however, I think it's something like 40% of labours end in an emergency C-section now. So, or like one in four, like it's very high basically. So, and what this girl's saying in the article is like, what people forget is that sometimes it's medically essential. It's not like,
Yeah.
it's not because, oh, someone's too posh to push, or they like they've just not tried hard enough or whatever. And or like someone said to me after Rory, my second birth, like I was like, we had a really dramatic C-section and la 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 la, and they were like, all birth is traumatic. Like, baby is coming out of like a
And whole.
whether it's out the sunroof, as they say, or like through your vagina, like it's still it's still traumatic for all parties involved, whether or not you've had a really smooth, like, I'm sure no one would describe their birth as smooth, they're like, or a very
Some people do, I suppose.
or a very long and eventful.
And also, like, no offense, but like I'm like a lot more open, potty mouth than Elle is for sure. But like, fuck off if you've got an opinion on how I had my baby. Like, and I'm not saying that to our followers, but like, if somebody had a real opinion to me about how I had my baby, it's got nothing to do with you. It's got nothing to do with you how anybody else has had their baby. If they're there with their baby talking about their birth experience, that's theirs, and like just leave them to it. Like, who
true.
who are you to say anything about how they've had their baby? So yeah, that annoys me, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's so true. And also going back to fertility, like everyone is on a completely different journey
Yeah.
start to finish, and how you want it to go. Like when you're 20 and you just, imagine yourself getting married and you're like
Yeah.
amazing dress, and then how your 3 babies later, like a year later, then like it just isn't necessarily how everyone else's journey goes.
No.
Right, on a lighter note, one final question is completely separate to
Is that our fertility issue over?
that's fertility's over.
Oh, well, thanks for your questions, guys. Before we move on to the next bit, I hope those answers were good, helpful. I don't have all the answers, and I know I'm not very medical. I forget all the right words, but yeah, I hope that was helpful. If anyone's got any others, then just shout and I'll try and reply to them on Instagram.
Well, actually, on slightly controversial, that's what I was going to say before, is someone told me, and it may have been you, that like research into fertility and in fact, I think I heard it on the Big Fat Negative podcast, like research and stuff into fertility and generally the budget for like OBGYN and women's health issues is really, really shit relative to like obesity, or I'm talking about the UK here primarily, but which is why like it's good to speak up about things, because whether or not this is because a lot of men are running the system and aren't doing it or whatever, I don't know the reasons, but it's better, it's the more we can speak about it, the more Tommies and people like and organizations like that raise awareness about fertility, the more likely it is, the more investment's going to go into research. And then
when I had a meeting with Tommies, maybe it's from that, like they were saying that basically for them to pass anything new in the NHS, it literally goes through like 10 years worth of stuff. So like the fact that like they say they've like done a oh my God, trial, and they've retested and everything, and like they've proved that having progesterone pessaries really helps if you've had multiple miscarriages. But like loads of NHS doctors are like, no, I've not heard that. It's not a thing, because they can't push it through because it's just so backlogged with other things, and things like that get pushed away. So like if you've had multiple miscarriages and nobody spoke to you about that, go on the Tommy's website and they've actually got a printout about the research, and you can take it to your doctor and be like, I want them, and show them that. But loads of people don't know about that because they can't pass anything quickly. So it's a shame. It's a big shame.
Yeah. Okay. Totally change the subject. Oh yes, Poolside problem.
What was
No, it's actually another question that we got, which is, what is your favourite gear change?
Oh,
we have automatic cars here. Yeah, it's not quite the same.
I do remember back in the day, I think it was second to third.
Yeah, mine's second to third.
Was it?
Fourth to fifth always feels a bit out of control.
And when you had a sixth gear, I used to be like, oh, I've got to go out one more, and it just feels like something's going to happen.
Yeah, no. In fact, it kind of freaked me out the other day that I've just noticed on my car that it tells you what gear you're in.
Does it?
Even though you don't change gear.
Yeah,
it just goes like fourth. I just saw the number changing and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to know what gear I'm in. It's 20 miles an hour.
I hate it though when like you're with an automatic car, I'm like, and you're going up a big hill or something, I'm like, this is the only time that I wish I had manual, because I could drop down a gear to like give it a bit of oomph.
Yeah.
I was like, with an automatic car, you just got like yeah, you're off.
Yeah, that's so true. And especially here when you have your AC on.
Oh yeah, the car's
your AC on, you can't basically going backwards. I'm literally like, turn the AC down before I go up Burnt House Hill. Okay, so second to third for both of us. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Actually, I think the person who submitted that question also said second to third. Okay, Poolside problem. I couldn't read my own writing then.
Do you want to do yours?
My Poolside problem is it's basically when you're trying to, like, obviously my kids are mostly at home. Albie goes to nursery occasionally, not when there's tropical storm like yesterday. But it's like a catch-22 of whether I hide from them in the house and like try and get jobs done, but then basically get minimal stuff done because Albie's finding me and distracting me. And then the second I want to go into the kitchen for a glass of water, it's game over for my plans. Or do you go out, like sneak out, get out the house, but then you're kind of wandering around because you can't get anything done because you need to actually be in the house, like with your laptop and stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of a lame one, but
no, I think it's a good one because it is like, it's true. Like if I'm at home and the twins are around me, I can't physically get anything done because like one's hanging off me no matter, like they might be playing occasionally, but you can't get as much done. So then you like remove yourself from the situation, but then you can't be in your own house. So then you have to like, find somewhere else to like plot up and do your admin, but then there's going to be other people around and it's just not the same as being at home, is it? So no, I kind of get that one.
And what is your poolside problem?
Mine is, so we've just had a month-long run of guests. I have friends, then family, and other family come over. And it is the best thing ever having them all here. Like, I absolutely love it. But it is also so exhausting. Like, so exhausting. Yeah. Like, it's a joke because you don't do much. You just go on the longest holiday ever. And I think that's why it's exhausting because you're like, out drinking and eating and like laying in the sun all day and like, yeah, we do a bit of that in our general life here, but like that isn't what we do all day every day. So when people leave, you are sometimes a bit like, one, you want to come down because it's been so lovely having them here, and two, you're like, I am so knackered. And actually I put a picture up on my Instagram the other day and I like commented saying, God, I feel like I've been on one big holiday. Like, I just feel like I need to move my body again. And 2 people commented it and was like, I think it's really triggering that you've put a picture up of you when you've got like a good body saying this. And I was like, if you read my post, what I'm saying is I feel like I need to move my body. I'm not saying I want to lose weight. I'm not saying like I feel really like fat.
Yeah.
I'm saying I've just sat around on my ass eating and I just want to move. Yes, I am maybe quite thin at the moment, but actually that's just my body naturally. I'm in workout all the time. I literally do Pilates once a week at the minute. So like, I think when people comment on things like that, like the judgment is just like their issue. And you're a bit like, come on, like read the post. Like it's just my body. If you don't like my body, don't follow me.
And also what you're commenting is on how you feel on the inside.
Yeah.
Which like is not, that's so relatable to anyone, no matter what shape and size you are,
Yeah.
whatever picture you post.
Yeah.
Like, to go with it, because we all sometimes just feel a bit like run down and crap on the inside.
Yeah.
Like you look amazing on the outside. Or...
Exactly. And like, don't get me wrong, I'm happy with my body at the minute. I'm 19 months postpartum from having twins. Like, if I want to post a picture of me in a pair of leggings because I feel good, so what? But I didn't feel good. I felt like I needed to like eat a load of green leaves and like swim or run around, not to lose weight, but just to like get my energy levels back up. I was just so lethargic. And also I didn't realise I had my coil taken out not long ago and I was just coming on my period. So that makes you really bloated and gross as well, doesn't it? And my skin was bad.
And you said to me as well about brain, like you were like, oh, not having to make decisions for like a million people all through the day.
Yeah.
Which like obviously you have to do as a parent anyway, but like doing it when you've got guests who aren't that independent here and they're on your kind of living in your schedule in your life, like you still, even if they're amazingly helpful and lovely and kind of company, like which they are, like it just, you're still having to make decisions about what time you eat, where you eat, what like you eat and stuff. And
yeah, like other twins are having a late night tonight. Yeah, they are, that's fine, but where will we be?
Like, when can we nap and night and stuff. Yeah, so the brain exhaustion from it all. Like I just went to away for the first Tom and I went away for the first time. The 2 of us,
Mum and Dad's weekend.
Parents on the leave. And then before that I went to Boston, and like in that time, and Boston wasn't a holiday, but like with those 2 trips combined, like this is my other poolside problem that I was maybe going to have today, is like the brain power that I've used on just planning and doing those 2 things. And then making sure the kids are fine, or when I took Rory and left Albie, like, you know, thinking about all the things that you need to do, and then all the like Amazon orders that you do to pick up, and then chasing the ones that never arrived, and stuff. And now we've got summer plans that already back
Yeah.
and I'm in, like, my brain is engaged in them, and I find that that physically exhausting stops me from feeling
Yeah.
my best self.
Yeah. So basically, we are totally with you at the minute if you're a bit like brain tired, because we're there with you.
Wow, this is a longie.
That was a longie, but I hope it was good and useful and you enjoyed it. Sorry, it was a lot of me chat and not as much Elle, but yeah, we will see you next week.
I enjoyed being an interviewer.
I liked it. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye!
Thanks for listening to Poolside Problems.
We hope we made you laugh a little and that you felt like you too were hiding under a duvet with us with a cup of coffee for some girl chats about our real problems and our silly poolside problems too.
If you enjoyed listening, we'd love to hear from you in a review below, and don't forget to subscribe.
If there's something you'd like us to open up the conversation about, or something we talked about today resonated with you, drop us a message on our Instagram at Poolside Problems and we will try to include it in future episodes.
And of course, nothing is TMI. We are all ears to anything else you'd like to share with us.
See you next week for more Poolside Problems. Tor and Elle.